or who is the most tortured franchise in the recent memory of the NBL. And people who discuss me on Twitter at NBL Pocket Pod probably know where I'm going with this. It is undoubtedly the Adelaide 36ers. And Andrew and I did a number of things last week talking about Van Groningen and so on and so forth. But this team, well, first of all, this particular season, NBL 22, there's only one win that currently separates New Zealand, who've moved on imports, had major injuries to McDowell White, Wetzel's missed games recently, and then obviously the horrible schedule inequity that New Zealand have had. Adelaide haven't really had any of that. And then one win separates these two teams. Inexcusable. And people probably are upset with me for not making enough concession about Humphries, but I think honestly the writing was on the wall with him. You knew he wasn't going to play the whole season, if at all half of it. Looking at how they're the most tortured franchise in recent memory, their last winning season was NBL 19, and calling that a winning season is a bit of a stretch because they were 50-50, 14-14. That was that. Was Randall there? No, it was Jacob Wiley and a few others. Can't really remember now. So they haven't had a winning season since then. That was NBL 19, so NBL 20, 21, and now this season looks like the worst of the three. Since losing Creek and making that grand final, they've gone 39 wins, 53 losses, and this season they are 5-11 and set to hang around that win percentage, 25% of their games or so, or 30% of their games, pardon me. So at the minute, their win tally is 44 wins, 64 losses, and as Andrew and I have said on previous episodes, this is Adelaide. This is a big basketball town. Perth comes first, Melbourne close behind, and then Adelaide, and then Sydney, and then probably Brisbane, a few others. Just as far as standing within the league, profitability, population, by how much is, how, if you're buying a franchise, how profitable and what your expectations of a franchise entering that city, I would put Adelaide really quite high on the NBL list. And the team's been dreadful. And this is the thing, they are the only team to neither qualify for finals or have a winning record in that span. While never winning a wooden spoon, this is the worst NBL franchise of the last 4 years. And the worst part is I don't think the future looks bright. So, and when I say qualify for the finals or having a winning record in that span, New Zealand, you might recall, did not qualify for the finals, but had that winning season with Hobson, but didn't make it on percentage. They were right there with Brisbane. But you look at it, Brisbane have kind of had losing seasons, but qualified for the finals in that time. Every other team, Cairns had wooden spoon seasons, but has gone into the finals the year after. So questions really need to be asked of the owner, Grant Kelly, because he's the conduit of the fan. He's the one guy you can fire the coach, you can get rid of players, not sign them, re-sign them, whatever. But Grant Kelly's the one guy who hangs around, conduit for the fans. And he's really the only holder of in that time, other than Daniel Johnson. GMs have come and gone, players have come and gone. So it's not a good look. And here's the other problem when I say the future's not bright. 2 of their 3 marquee Australian players are either incapable of playing a full season in Isaac Humphries, or soon to be over 34 in Daniel Johnson, and then Mitch McCarron, who I quite like. I think a lot of people quite like. I will say this, good news, light at the end of the tunnel, not just criticism, let's do critique. The NBL has a short memory. Cairns were at the bottom of the table and then went into the semi-final and were a win or 2 away from making it to a grand final and almost beat off Perth, who were amazing. There's talk of Casper Ware signing with the 36ers, talked about it before. I like Casper Ware, he's a winner, but is he going to help this team get to the finals this year? I don't think that's actually physically possible or mathematically possible. And then does that give up on the McCarron as a point guard experiment, which seemed to go quite well in Melbourne when they won the championship? There's been a lot of talk about McCarron, whether people like him on socials, Twitter. I think the problem with this team isn't McCarron at point guard. As I said, he's the point guard on a championship team, or has been in the past. The problem is, we've said it before, but I will repeat it. Pushing your chips in with Humphries just hasn't got a track record that was believable. Sorry to Isaac and his management. And then a lack of import production. And think about this. I mean, Adelaide's lack of good play should not come as a surprise to anyone. All you had to do was look at their import stocks, and not that Hannahs and Withers are necessarily bad players, but look at who they're going up against. I mean, Sydney at the start of the year had Jalen Adams, fresh off NBA, young player, really exciting, always looked pretty good. Jarrell Martin, who played the year before, knew the NBL, looked like a bit of a player, got hurt, but had pedigree, you could tell. And then they had RJ Hunter, who'd been around the NBA for quite some time, was at a good age bracket, it was late 20s, got hurt. Then they replaced him with Clark, who's got an NBA resume. That's who Sydney's going out and get. And apparently they're still under the salary cap. So that's what. And then you've got a Perth, Bryce Cotton, $600,000 spend plus Vic Law, reputation last season. When you just bank it up, I mean, Adelaide just on paper, and no offense to Hannahs and Withers, but they didn't have better imports than Perth. They didn't have better imports than Sydney. They didn't have better imports than Cairns, arguably, with Machado and McCall and Zimmerman. Melbourne have got what imports? McGarda? No, maybe they're a bit different. They spent in other ways, but you could see this coming. This shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. So, you get what you pay for. And this Adelaide team put in a certain amount of money. And it just hasn't worked out. I wish that the NBL and teams would treat their fans with the intellectual credit that they deserve and release some sort of, here's what teams are paying and what's going here are the credentials of the league, so that you could have an intellectual conversation about this. But I think if you looked at the spend, Adelaide are right where they should be, down the bottom, because I think they'd be one of the cheaper teams. Prove me wrong. If Adelaide people got upset, and I mean Adelaide management, I tell you what, open your books. I can keep a secret. They're not going to do that. That's all I have for you this week. A pretty lackluster episode without Andrew, but them the breaks. Again, review the show on Apple or Spotify if you would. Patreon if you really like the show. We do really appreciate that contribution. It really helps keep the lights on, and more than anything, keep the fire burning. You can throw this NBL content, you kind of throw it out there and it goes into a void, and unless you've got your little inner circle of cheerleaders, it doesn't really go anywhere. So we do appreciate that very much. What have I done here? Patreon, Booktopia, use the link. If you're going to buy a book, do it there. Why not? We'd appreciate it.